God.
I concur. I am currently eating.
Oh yeah, keeping with the running
Keeping with the trend.
gag or the motif.
But ironically enough, yesterday while I was editing, my fat ass broke my 15-year-old desk chair.
Yes, please share this story real quick because I just hear, like, I hadn't heard from you all day, and then you're like, yeah, I was out chair shopping.
It was so funny because I was just sitting here leaning like, the hell was that?
What was that? Oh God, they know. They
know. They've heard it.
The AI overlords know.
The board just explodes.
They know we're talking about them.
They're aware. They've become self-aware. Yeah. So I was chair shopping today because my fat ass was sitting in this chair yesterday and leaning on the arm just like shattered out from under me and the whole chair fell apart and I fell backwards on it. And yeah, was laughing at me. Justified.
Glorious.
But yeah, it's like I guess I'm in the market for a new desk chair. This thing is like 15 years old. It has outstayed its welcome. But
oh, so you didn't find a new chair?
Oh, I found one, but I had to ship it, so it's gonna be a minute. I have to live with this broken thing for at least a few more days here.
Oh, so you are sitting on the remnants
I'm currently
of the chair.
sitting on the shattered remains of the once great society of chair.
The broken throne.
The shattered throne of a once great society.
Well, I mean, hey, all things
come to an end.
Yes,
especially desk chairs that can no longer handle my weight. Yeah,
that's too good.
Yeah, it was.
So, what'd you go with this time? Did you go with something?
I found a nice,
little bit
classy little leather John. We'll give it a shot.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay,
something new. Trying it out.
Something new. I like it.
Has a return policy on it, so if it drive.
So if you break this one, you can return.
Just immediately out of the box breaks. Love it.
That's too good.
So what's new with you? What's shaking?
Nothing. Just always doing the same thing, expecting different results. So I guess I guess I'm insane.
I was gonna say, isn't that like the clinical definition of insanity?
I guess, I don't know. I've never looked it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Nor will I. But
you can't make me. Yeah,
still trying to write a story the original way.
The classic hard edge research and
yes,
rolling up the sleeves,
the non-AI way,
and not having Skynet do it for you.
Yes, since we're gonna get into
the heat of it,
into the Amaretto Ignatius.
Ooh.
And wait, what else could
meanwhile ChatGPT has like a list of every color in the red spectrum in the hundreds of thousands. Yes,
probably, most likely.
Yeah, this is a topic, it's certainly a topic, but it's one that we've like lightly touched on in a lot of our guest episodes and a lot of things we've discussed with other people. Just honestly, like given the heat of everything this last fall through all the strikes and everything, it's a topic that came up organically in other conversations that we've had. And not that we were actively trying to avoid it, but it was, obviously not our intention to go down that spiral, and we have several times. I figured we should devote a full conversation to it here and actually talk about it, because I've certainly done my fair share of dancing around it. It's a tough one.
Yes, and we are talking about AI specifically
as it pertains to the industry.
And like in creative industry and the artistic industry, not just specifically film, but mostly.
Especially writing outside of film as well. It's definitely having an impact there. Publishing and various all kinds of avenues. It's a big. Honestly, it's something we're not going to be able to cover in any kind of grand scope. But maybe give some insights here that to what it's honestly it's been a heated topic for about a year now, more so than, but definitely has been over the last year a very
when did like ChatGPT hit the scene officially? Was it a year ago or was it longer now?
Honestly, I do not recall exactly when. I know it was like starting to be heavily used within the last year. I know it was around before that, but I think when was it? It hit Apple's ecosystem sometime like amidst the strikes, and that spurred up a lot because Apple has wide reach and they weren't on that platform yet, and that spurred up a lot. And now they've since that even came to play, they've integrated it with their quote unquote Apple Intelligence that they're implementing in September.
Oh my gosh!
So
we got to come up with the pair defense,
the study podcast artificial intelligence.
Or what's the opposite? What's the opposite of an apple? An orange?
I like that. Apples and oranges.
I don't know. I don't know what the app. Someone tell me send me a
Linux-based operating system.
Post a comment. Yeah, send me an MDOS file on what the opposite of an apple is, please. But yes, we are discussing the AI.
Yeah, tricky ass
today.
Topic. I'm sure, if you're interested in the types of things that we cover on the study, like you've heard something of the writers and SAG-AFTRA strikes that occurred last year that were both highly centered around studio usage of AI, respectively. I'm actually going to link the core articles regarding both of those strikes into our About. By all means, check those out for further details. But essentially what both of them boiled down to was that studios were using artificial intelligence tools. And also, to sidetrack us here slightly, it's commonly referred to as AI. It's not exactly AI just yet. What it is more,
at least not in the
Skynet sense, it's going to kill us all. And it's
the self-awareness.
Yeah, it's not really a self-aware operating system, like anything like that. What it basically is more aptly defined as is an algorithmic learning platform. So they're basically sequences of code that are a yes/no type thing. The quickest way to explain it probably is think about Instagram. Every time you log in, check out an Instagram reel, you either like or don't like an Instagram reel. You spend more time on it. It learns information about how you are interacting with the content, and it makes preferences and shows you additional content based on what it understands about. And learning platforms that are built into editing software, into writing platforms, operate in a very similar kind of way. They can learn information based on Google. That's why you hear people say they're training AI. It's learning things based off of whatever information you're feeding it, be it from user input or.
Yeah, it's like the. I'll come back to it. There was something I was.
That's fair.
Something there I was trying to compare it to. Essentially, I look at it as it's not a true self-aware thinking machine. It's a more sophisticated database finder, essentially. And it's
at least on the front of ChatGPT, and as far as it's concerned with writing, that's very much the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
For things like edit software, some of the new capabilities that are on the horizon, you see things like, I know Adobe is incorporating certain tools. Essentially what they're capable of are like trimming down an edit, cutting out all, like basically bringing an edit of like the core clips that you import, doing the job of an assistant editor to bring it to like a basic cut and like chop out all like a dead space or, generally like fine tuning an edits to get it to a place where a more senior editor can jump in and like they're basically removing the position of some of the mid-level post professionals, which is getting into a very controversial conversation of what is ethical about this. Like a lot of the times these tools are being brought into play for studios to remove jobs and recoup that revenue back into the budget. And that gets into a very gray area for the industry. It's like, oh, we're just using this new technology to eliminate jobs. And that's a scary frontier.
No, I mean, well, when we get into the topic of where we stand on it, no, it's definitely an inflection point.
Yeah. Like to get it to like the most brass of tacks, I think what it's beneficial to are independent, and this is a double-edged sword. It always is. Whatever the controversial topic is, it is always a double-edged sword for the independents and the studios. But I think, like a lot of other things, it's a great tool for independents to be able to compete on a higher level with resources that they otherwise wouldn't have. But by that same token, it's pushing a lot of people into the independent circuit by eliminating jobs that they would otherwise be able to get in the more centralized portion of the studio system. So it's a very double-edged sword there. It cuts both ways, and something that gives an independent-minded person a more creative edge to complete their goals, the studios will misuse to fight back. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking at how this affects visual effects too. I mean, I've been seeing over the last few months more and more credit sequences in big budget releases having an entire section devoted to how AI is utilized.
Oh, really?
Within
Like which ones?
The biggest one that I can recall off the top of my head was Furiosa had an entire whole section in their VFX category specifically devoted to artificial intelligence. And I was like,
oh, shit.
so
Okay.
like that, the fact that they're actually crediting AI platforms now is a whole new frontier. Like that's getting substantial.
And what did it say, like what platforms they were using?
I do not recall specifically for that.
I was just, maybe, I didn't know if maybe you caught the name.
I think that they use their own like built platforms would be my guess, but I honestly do not recall. But especially when VFX is on the frontier of unionizing themselves, I think that that's an interesting place that they're in to begin with. And I think that that's only going to further push that to be the case. We talked about, with ACE or the editors union, like that's, it's eliminating a lot of mid-level positions, especially for editors and writers. But I mean, this has implications across the entire industry that it's, I just read an article the other day talking about how the WGA, the writers union, reported $6 million in lost profits over the period between the strikes last fall.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that much.
I mean, how much you want to actually say that that's the case of specifically usage of AI. I mean, it could be a myriad of factors, but it's interesting. And I think it's, worth digging in and looking at all this stuff, but it's almost impossible to keep up with because it feels like every 5 minutes, you're still behind the news of what's happening because it's getting
something else. Yeah.
And
is there even like certain, so when you were saying about that AI credit in the Furiosa film, so are there engineers working on like are there like ways to teach how to properly use the AI to spit out what you want?
Well, I think what it is a lot of the time
happening?
is it's obviously for each one of these departments, it is vastly different for how it's utilized. But I think in the case of visual effects, it can push things forward. It can handle certain roto elements, take certain elements of footage, take a lot of the roto work out. And for those who may not have heard that term before, rotoscope artistry is cutting around moving objects inside of a frame, like a person or an object that was photographed, and like tracking that throughout a frame and frame by frame cutting it out of the image so that it can be superimposed onto a green screen or whatever it might be. So, like these edit tools are like coming into play where it can do a lot of the mid-level work and cut out the jobs that, assistant editors or assistant roto artists or, you always look at like any of the Marvel films or any of the new Star Wars films, like the mile-long list of roto artists or other VFX artists that are involved. It takes a lot of that. The idea is to size down a lot of that work. And, there's a double edge to this. It's like, as much as I'm constantly wanting to make things easier in the filmmaking process, that like technological advancements, making things easier is often the name of the game. But it's coming at a very rapid and quick expense of positions and jobs. And that's obviously very concerning to somebody who depends on the film industry. So,
well, yeah. And I know we've talked about like technology in general, like just as a species, the modern technology has jumped so far, rapidly increasing its sophistication, and even just in our lifetime, that it's this ever evolving tool that do we ever truly know how to use it? Essentially, you know what I mean? Like
at the end of the day, it should be in the service of people. It should be in the service of artists.
This is like a terrible analogy, but it's like, you don't, like, I wouldn't hand a running chainsaw to my 6-year-old nephew and be like, here, go ahead. It's just like, no, there has to be some sort of at least safety training on what to do.
Yeah.
And I wonder that sometimes with technology and, things like social media and AI, just the computer, even though it's not, it doesn't seem, obviously at first glance, it doesn't seem as dangerous as like a chainsaw, but can it still have lasting effects and implications and create dangers that we haven't thought of?
Yeah. And weirdly enough, I think this affects the camera department probably the least that I can think of, because like at the camera and stunts only through the lens of visual effects and that's constantly ramping up and becoming more efficient and dwarfing those departments, and is it going to have an effect? But I think that weirdly enough, a camera is always going to have relevance, and it may get hit by things like LiDAR sensors, eliminating focus pullers and those types of things that are all are ramping up are a threat of their own. But it's a fascinating time in filmmaking where technology is getting to a crazy powerful degree, and how you leverage that power is interesting. And I think that the studios are very terrified that their standpoint is being decentralized. I mean, I've got a certain level of insider knowledge and people I know that do work in the film industry, and I'm watching a lot of productions move out to overseas into other parts of the United States, and productions are less and less dependent on Los Angeles. It is becoming a very global animal anymore that isn't hyper centralized to LA like it has been for the last 100 years. So I think studios are very scared, and they're going to fight back with every tool they can get their hands on, but it's going to have implications for people who don't want to play nice.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird too how like you think about it, like everyone, it creates, I don't want to use the term, but it almost creates an arms race in the sense of like, I didn't even know about like these more sophisticated algorithmic learning, AI, whatever you want to call them, software programs until somewhat more recently, like ChatGPT. And now you have Meta AI. I just saw another one the other day advertised.
Google's ramping their system
Google's
up.
Version.
Yeah.
Or someone else was, like everyone's got to have their own version of it now.
Yeah. And I don't think that AI is a very apt term, because like once we do create a sentient AI, what's the delineation there?
Yeah, what happens?
It's almost like we've put the cart before the horse in terms of a lot of that, and it makes the language surrounding a lot of this very difficult. Which at this point it is AI.
Speaking of,
but
yeah,
there are a lot of great cinematic representations of artificial intelligence in the past that people glom onto. Things such as like Short Circuit, Ex Machina, more recently The Creator, which was a positive take on AI, like Short Circuit. But you also have things like Terminator or Westworld that kind of shine a light on the dangers of AI and how it could potentially take over humanity kind of stuff. A lot of interesting, plot-provoking things throughout the years, throughout all kinds of storytelling revolving around AI for sure. Like 2001 also we had mentioned previously in a previous episode with Hal.
And speaking of horse, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to bring up one of our favorite movies again.
Always.
And just because it's like so on point, that's what makes it still so good. One of my favorite scenes now, if not one of my favorite scenes of all time, in Jurassic Park. I think you can know what scene I'm talking about.
I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. It's the Chilean sea bass dinner scene.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Honestly, yes, perfect analogy.
Like this scene, like now credit, obviously we talked about it in that episode. That scene when I was little, I would always skip by it, or I would just not want to watch it.
As a kid, it's like there's no dinosaurs. Stop talking.
Yeah. But now, I mean, that's one of the scenes, like, I will seek that scene out more than I will the dinosaur scenes now sometimes.
Honestly, it's one of the best examples of philosophy in cinema in the 90s.
Yeah. And, just to reiterate, I highly recommend watching the scene again if you can, even just the clip of it. They're sitting down at dinner and they're in that strange dining room. Like, I never understood why are there projectors, showing like the business growth, but that it works perfect with what
the ambiguity of it all.
And then, like you said, the philosophy and the theme that they're getting at. And Malcolm literally states, right out front what this whole movie is about and he says, he's very disturbed about what he's seen here with the dinosaurs. And he says, he compares, he says to John Hammond, you're taking genetic power and you're wielding it like some kid who found his dad's gun. And one of the things I love, he says, I'll tell you what's wrong here. He says, the problem with this place is there was no discipline to attain it. You don't have the respect for
before you even knew what you had.
You're wielding. Yeah. You patent it, packaged it, and sell it. You want to sell it. You stood on the shoulders of someone else. You read what they did and you took the next step. You didn't attain the knowledge for yourself.
So you don't take any responsibility for it.
And I just like that's where I think about and that's not just, you don't have to say that that's particularly about AI.
I personally take it as all human advancement through technology.
Well, yeah, you can look at it as anything.
And AI definitely falls into that category.
Yeah. That's where I kind of fall into it for me. Like I don't I mean, I think it's inevitable now. The genie's out of the bottle. I don't think you're getting the concept.
And that's the argument a lot of people
AI
have.
back.
You know, you try and speak on the dangers of all this, and people will get, you can't stop the onrush of technology. I'm like, yeah, that's very true, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, look at all I'm saying is look at the cost.
Yeah. I guess I don't know how would you slow down the.
I think that's
technology
exactly
train.
the problem is you don't. Especially where the current state of things are, where it's, you know, you look at filmmaking in our youth, it was a very special thing that not everybody had. It was on the horizon with, you know, DV cams and everything coming out of the woodwork, but it was not like it is today where everybody literally has a camera in their pocket. Now, a camera that can edit its own footage in your pocket. Like, we have a literal whole edit suite built into a camera in your pocket now. That's like calling it a camera in your pocket these days is an understatement, because it's much, much more than that. And, you know, everybody, look at us, for example. We have a pulpit where we're, you know, espousing our takes on this thing. You know, like, everybody has a voice now through this machine, and it's a unique time in which, you know, the noise of it all, you know, where do you focus in on all of it?
That's like a weird thing that's like a weird thing too. I always think to myself is like, well, just because I have an opinion doesn't necessarily mean do I need to share it, or do I even need to have an opinion at all? Like, I still am a firm believer of you don't have to necessarily have an opinion on something.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It can be like, I don't really think one way or the other. It's my simple argument of what's better, air or water. Like, well, kind of need both.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get into some soul taxing topics with this.
Yeah. This is why I have been scared of tackling this one in a dedicated episode, because it is a tricky, controversial set of things. It's not really any one thing. You look how this even just affects any one part of the industry. It's not the same as it is for the WGA as it is for SAG-AFTRA. I mean, SAG-AFTRA, the whole issue with them in the studios was that they were going to take all extras applying for any position, digitally scan them for reuse, and contractually obligate that one day of shooting would accrue to an entire career of extra work. So basically, for a single day play of pay, you're basically selling away your entire potential career, and that's vastly concerning when that first came out. That shocked the entire industry that's where the studios were headed. And anybody who can think past 5 minutes can understand how scary that is.
Yeah.
I've said multiple times through all of this, it's like, life is hard enough for artists, and we're going to make it 10 times harder for them now, like, with all this. This is, you know, maybe I'm a doomsayer, maybe I'm freaking out, but I do think there's a lot of concerns with all this. And I think that these strikes were extremely justified.
No, I would, especially when it comes to the AI. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I don't want to I think if I'm just focusing on the writing aspect of it, I know when a couple of the, like, ChatGPT first came on the scene, I can think of a few publishers that they had to shut down their submissions, like Portal, because they were just getting flooded with just people sending them just AI based stuff, which I don't know. I'll be honest. If someone tells me, oh, this was made by AI, I don't think I want to buy it then. I don't know. Because I'm like, well, okay, can I just go and do it then?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up.
Plug in the same parameters that you did?
It's interesting that you bring that up from somebody who works a lot as an editor. I've often had the thought, I'm like, all these, Adobe, DaVinci, Final Cut, and through Apple, obviously, all these different platforms and numerous other ones are implementing these AI features that are standardized updates that you cannot opt out of. They're just part of the software. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, what if you don't agree with this? And as somebody who's committed to this line of software, you have no choice but to be financially supportive of it because you're dependent on it for your job. And I think that that's a very scary place to be as well. It's like you don't have any choice but to literally financially support it because you are dependent on it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you...
Yeah, like you don't even have the choice of voting with your dollars in some cases for these things, which is interesting.
It's one of those things where I don't fully know where I stand on it.
I don't even say I would say that I'm against it, but what I will say is that I am against it being leveraged against people's livelihood. That's what I can say definitively. I am against. I'm all for things being run more efficiently, things being, improved and people's lives being made easier. But as we've said before on other episodes, I think part of the allure of creative works and, filmmaking, writing, have you, is the challenge. And if you remove the challenge from it through extremely advanced technology, is the endeavor truly worth it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of trying to get at with, do you really want to buy an entire novel written by AI?
I've said before that one of my favorite shows is Stargate. As a joke a few years ago, they did a table read of a Stargate script that was generated through AI as a joke. And I thought it was pretty great because it was like just a mockery of the whole situation.
Well, I think South Park did an episode too.
Yeah, I think they did.
Or I think at least the ending of it was all written by AI or something, or ChatGPT.
Yeah. I remember for a while that was like a big thing, was like before, like in its primitive stages, before like, AI could generate a script of any kind of value. That was like the big thing, was to like generate like a few pages of like a Batman script or something, because it would come out in like the most ludicrous of dialogue, like just nonsensical bull.
Well, I've noticed, so when you were talking, that makes me think, okay, so when you were talking about how these programs, this software, like editing software, DaVinci, Adobe, etc., have their own AI tools built into it, that makes me think of, a program I tend to use a lot, Canva.
Okay, yeah, you've mentioned that
It's
before.
like it's a more consumer-friendly Photoshop, I guess would be the best way I can describe it. It's much more intuitive. The learning curve is easier than Photoshop. I don't know if it's quite as powerful as Photoshop, though, but there's less of a learning curve. It's much easier to kind of just jump in and pick it up. So it's much more user-friendly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that discipline, I guess, that you need to get good at it, as you do with things like Adobe Premiere.
But as with anything, it takes its learning curve.
Yeah. So one of the things they have in it is like an AI image generator. You can give it a prompt and it'll spit out an image.
Interesting.
And I've dabbled around with it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed is it is still, at least for this version, it is still very bad. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not giving it the input it needs, but can sometimes be very bad at faces of people. Like you'll get very like certain shapes will come out weird. Certain images will show up that you're like, it's almost like an artifact from something else, and you kind of like look at it and you're like, why is that in there? What is causing the prompt? What in the prompt am I putting that's causing it to generate something that looks like it shouldn't be there? Like I remember trying to do one for, kids at an Easter egg hunt, finding eggs.
Yeah.
And I got one of the most demonic looking children I've ever seen in my life, with bunny ears.
Yeah.
Running through like this blue patch of grass. And I was just like, it was a little disturbing, to be honest.
It has done so much for meme culture. So much. Like I saw somebody did like a walk through the woods with like Nicolas Cage and like Elijah Wood and Tobey Maguire, and like it's just like this is like night vision like scope look at like all these like celebrities, but like clearly generated by AI, but like they're just like doing like like having like the craziest drunk night imaginable in the middle of the woods, and like they're just like like racing a pig in the middle of the woods and stuff. I'm like, man, like the amount of technology to make stupid bull jokes is unreal. like more technology, like more like computing power than put man on the moon is being used to make stupid jokes on the internet. Like, what a wild time to be alive.
Yeah.
And like stupid crap like the the more primitive versions of like video AI, and like people at one point realized that it had no understanding of like how to make people eat spaghetti. and somebody generated Will Smith eating spaghetti, knowing that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've seen
And it
that.
like blew
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
And then like not all that long ago, like Will Smith was making fun of it eating spaghetti.
It comes to that point of no return.
Yeah.
I mean, where is its place?
I think what it's the effect that it's having generally throughout the industry is it's making creators more independent, like in more independent roles. So like there are fewer and fewer assistant editors. You're going to see a lot of full-time editor, like 6 times as many full-time editors, because those positions just don't exist. Those lower, so it's gonna, like, you're gonna be seeing everybody across the board being forced to give it their all. And I think, there is an argument for that, as that's a good thing for everybody to fully bring out everyone's potential. I don't think that is a bad thing, but I do think there are certain people who need those mid-level roles and don't have it in them to be a full-time editor all the time, or be a top-level writer and bring all those tools to the forefront on a full-time basis. I think that those mid-level positions are very important to a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and so I'm help me out here a little bit. I think I kind of follow what you're saying. Yeah. So when you say more, okay, so you don't need to have like the assistant editors.
Yeah, because we're going to have a place where, there's just an algorithmic tool in every piece of software that can do the work of a mid-level editor.
And so you'll just have like the main editor.
Yes, you're going to have a lot more platforms. You're going to have and essentially by, extension, a lot more creative noise where everybody is just constantly making content. Everybody has their own platform, and we're all relying on these extremely advanced tools with everybody having a very limited skeleton type crew of creative talent, operating at the maximum potential that they can with these extremely powerful tools. I think that's going to bring us to an interestingly different place.
So here's my thing then. If you take out, let's say, the journeyman level areas, that journeyman level of stuff where, okay, you've built a foundation, you have your base camp, and now you're off to become a master of your craft.
Yeah.
And you sort of do sometimes the grunt work or the harder things, to get through, sometimes the tedious aspects of a craft. And I'm specifically talking like artistically here.
Did you just say TikToking? Like T-I?
No, I'm specifically talking about the artistic endeavors and entertainment.
I heard what I wanted to hear, I guess. Oh God.
But if you lose, so if we go like you're a novice, you're a beginner, then you're what are the levels here? Anyway, but if you lose that journeyman status, if those things are gone, like, okay, you like, if you want to become a plumber, you go to school, you take classes, then you become that journeyman status, you go out, you work under like a master plumber, and you learn more of the trade. If you take that level out, like you take the middle out completely and just replace it with AI, does that mean that you will ever have true masters again in the future?
Yeah, and that's my concern as well. It's like that.
Oh, okay, so you were saying the same. Okay, we were on the same page.
Very much so, and I that's exactly where, like, because like I've learned tons by like just taking AC positions and just or being even a PA and just like seeing how a large scale machine will work. I've worked lockups and other things on bigger scale things, and just to honestly be in the machine and see how it all works is like worth a ton. And and not to say that AI is going to scrub out PAs. PAs will always have use, like 1,000%. But like the general point being, like any mid-level position, like obviously, like I know editors who have climbed into roles that are like not the premier editor of a certain entity, but are positions in which they can learn a ton and reach beyond their current standing. And that is worth, honestly, that's worth more than any salary, any, other thing you could gain from a job. Like learning how, the mechanics of something works can be worth its weight in gold. And, if we are forcing people into just bludgeoning their way through in top level positions on every whatever, part of it too is I don't know that there is the amount of creative caliber to handle the amount of expertise that we have at this point across the scope of the industry. And I think, is it going to crush under its own weight? Is kind of like that's a dark place to think, but like,
yeah,
these are the things I think about is like, if we're removing the amount of jobs through, the amount of technology that's coming into play. That's also having ripple effects across other industries as people leave filmmaking or writing or whatever else.
and until we figure out how to live forever, I mean, essentially, like if I'm thinking of like if we're talking about like film editing, I'm thinking of someone like Schoonmaker or like Khan.
Yeah.
If like whatever, whoever's out there now, eventually, they pass on. And if there's no one who's actually a true journeyman in the old school sense, and it's all just AI, who becomes the head editor then? The AI? I guess the AI becomes the head editor.
Well, that's
then.
like the thing is like, I remember seeing a bunch of memes on this where it was like, since when the hell did we get to a point where AI is handling all of the artistry and poetry, and I'm out here throwing away trash or some other job where it's like, why didn't we train the robot to throw away the trash? Whereas I'm out here
exactly
doing the grunt job and I'm overqualified to do, and the robot is over here writing sonnets.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
It's backwards.
It is very backwards.
And it's like I said before, it's like, it's not that, I don't appreciate tools being extremely helpful, but I think that there's a certain point where they can be too helpful.
Well, I look at it as, so I think having certain ones where, like an AI algorithm that can help you read tons of medical data or scientific data, and spit out, or show you, okay, there's an asteroid headed to Earth. Here's the top ways we could prevent it, or like, I think in that sense, I'm all for having AI do stuff like that. The computing, the grunt work of reading the data.
Well, there's also too like the laziness aspect that we've talked about as well. Like, having something like Neuralink in the equation where you can like Neo your way into like reading 5,000 books is like, is that more valuable than actually like going through the experience of reading it yourself or doing the research yourself? Like, you can have ChatGPT generate, like if I really wanted to, I've even dabbled in it in the past with our research and then decided that, it's negative to like how we run our show. Like you can attest to our audience as well. It's like, we just stopped doing that at a certain point because we felt it was counterproductive. But I mean, if I just sat there and told ChatGPT to write me up a set of research materials for an episode, I don't know how to get through that episode because I don't have any personal knowledge on that topic. Yeah,
exactly. And it almost, to me, when I think about this, I'm trying to like put this in terms like it de-incentivizes you from just the artistic side. If we're talking about creative endeavors, like you said, sonnets, poems, novels, filmmaking, whatever, the humanities, if you will. I think you put it perfectly. It said, why did we decide to put AI and machines working in the humanities when we could have them working in things,
or have them clean up the damn ocean, or do something for the well-being of all.
Oh yeah, water, like your water authorities, how do we solve world hunger?
Yeah, I was going to say, put them on problems that are genuinely difficult to solve.
Yeah, why is it in the humanities? Because I think by doing that, it sort of makes people not want to embark or pursue something in the humanities, be it for a career or even just for their own sake of an outlet.
It results in a cannibalistic culture that is constantly after itself.
I can remember one of my professors back in college when I took just like world lit class, and he asked the question, do you need to read stories? Like, do you need this class? Essentially, was what he was asking us. Is this class important? We all kind of looked at him. We're like, what do we say? What do we do? And he was like, I'll just tell you. It's like, not really. You don't necessarily need this, but it is to give you a break from life, in the sense of it's to give you more experience. It's to make you a more well-rounded person. I hate to say it, none of you are ever going to be storming the beaches of Normandy, which I'm perfectly happy about not doing. But to be able to look back and read someone's story, an account of what they experienced in an event like that, or someone from the other side of the world, and hear their voice, their thoughts, their feelings. Does putting the AI into this section of civilization, if for lack of a better term, sort of just take away the point of why we do these things, why we tell stories, why we make art.
As I've said before, like there have been many previous episodes in which you and I have discussed, I respect the turbulence that creators go through. I respect the obstacles that have been overcome to complete a project. Like the endless, like the hurricane that hits Jurassic Park. We're in an age where meteorological science has hit a point.
See, I got you doing it now.
Yeah,
too.
you got me doing it. Yeah, like what if they had such advanced knowledge that they knew that was going to happen and shut down production and didn't fully lean into that skid? We would not have the Jurassic Park we know today. Like, it's those happy accidents. And it's like when things are so like I look at like market research as problematic for a lot of productions that go in and like, obviously there are situations where that has proven to be an asset to studios and productions because of certain blunders that have been gotten into. But it's like there is also a backward swinging edge to that pendulum where, the market research can cause things that rightfully should be getting made are not. Market research in a lot of examples could be considered, overthinking or retooling or reworking something that is fine as is. It doesn't need any more refinement. And it makes you question the entire system. There's a lot of things, that is the case for, but there's a lot of fears coming up from AI that it'll only compound existing problems, honestly. But it's not even just within the creative arts. You look at things like even as simple as fast food jobs, like they're automating regular fast food chains to the point where fewer and fewer of those jobs exist. And I think it's coming into play across all industries, especially in tech. As somebody who went through the tech industry.
One thing I know, speaking of just going across all industries, I know in baseball, I think next spring training, I know they've been using it in like some of the minor leagues. They're going to just do away with the home plate umpire.
Yeah.
And have it all be based on. I mean, look at tennis. Tennis has it. A lot of the Grand Slams, the U.S. Open, the Australian Open. Like if you watch the U.S. Open, the tennis coming up, maybe even the Olympics are doing it right now. I haven't watched yet.
Yeah.
But the line judges to determine whether a ball is in or out are not there anymore. It's all just based on the computer grid and the AI on the court. And when you hear someone say out, it's just a recording of a person saying out, and there's no challenging it anymore. I know it's to help speed up the game, but I do think of that. I know baseball wants to implement just a complete computer behind home plate calling balls and strikes.
Yeah.
And they've been testing it. Do you take that one step further? Do you just replace, do you eventually come to a point where you replace the athletes?
Yeah. Because also you can make the argument like long standing, like way decades down the line that performing the act of athleticism is hazardous to the athletes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then what's the point of any of this?
Yeah. I want to see a real person do it. I want to see the athleticism.
Well, it's also to bring that back around full circle. It's like I've seen Disney has been training stunt robots to perform the actions of stuntmen, and it's like, well, what?
It's so weird to me that, like you said, you put it a good argument there. Like I said, I'm not fully sure where I fall on it. I'm definitely more weird.
Well, it's also too. It's like AI. It is such a broad topic
at least in the creative field.
There are so many different pockets of this that are like good in one area and horrific in another, or even horrific from one side of an argument, and well, of course we want this like on the other, and it's an inherently complicated and divisive and problematic topic of conversation, and hence why I have avoided it for as long as I have. But I think if we don't get some middle ground on it, it's going to rip a lot of things apart, not just creative works. I mean, it's, like we've said, it's other industries, it's other things as well. But, obviously our point of reference is for the creative arts, but I think it's generally leading us down a dangerously lazy path, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, you think too, like if we're just talking about like just focusing on the creative, because again, an AI helping like biomedical researchers come up with like the next medicine or like a cancer cure. Yes. If AI can help with that, I'm all for that.
Obviously.
Like, I don't think that's
an area where it should be implemented.
Yes. And I think it goes back to your original thing. Why did we decide to put AI into the humanities rather than into the opposite of it, working other aspects of life?
Areas where people are generally crushed under the weight of their endeavors. It's
why is there lead in my drinking water?
Yeah.
Okay, AI can help figure that out and fix it. Oh, great. That's perfect. For when it comes to the creative side, it doesn't feel earned to me, and that's why I don't particularly feel like I'm a supporter of it. Because if you're watching like the classic hero's journey and story that we've talked about multiple times on here, it's almost like just skipping to the end, or just that feeling that there's no earning what the character has learned. The character learns nothing, essentially, or doesn't go through a transformation, or doesn't really go through a journey.
Well, you look at it purely from the aspect of a machine does not have human experience. Yes, it can. Mm-hmm. You can make the argument that it could be trained the human experience through Google or whatever, but I don't care about the story generated by an AI learning about us through the vastness of a server farm. Mm-hmm. I care about a person's creative experience and their creative artistry of how they articulate it for other people to interpret. That's what I give a shit about. I don't give a what this stupid robot thinks about anything.
I think of another. Did I bring this up last week? I know I brought up SpongeBob a little bit.
Oh yes, yeah.
The Neptune episode.
No, I don't believe we discussed
where he's making the burgers.
I think you sent me something, but I don't think we talked about it on the air.
Well, it just makes me think like a charming little episode of SpongeBob,
as they all
where
are.
they're at the Fry Cook convention.
Yeah. And
SpongeBob pulls the golden spatula out of the fryer grease, and it's Neptune's spatula.
The Dutchman's treasure.
And Neptune challenges him to a cook-off, and whoever can cook the most patties wins.
Yeah.
Obviously, SpongeBob gets demolished. Neptune's the god of the sea, and he just makes millions, thousands of burgers.
Yeah.
And he makes one. But Neptune's burgers taste like absolute and all the people who try to eat them, they spit it out.
Yeah.
And he says, all right, mine's no good. But SpongeBob's one burger that he makes is delicious.
Yeah.
Because he actually made it.
Still no pickles.
Because Neptune is using like magic and, taking the easy route to make them.
Yeah.
Where SpongeBob there's actually a moment where he's like putting two little pickles on the burger and makes smiley faces and then tucks them in with a slice of cheese and then reads them like a bedtime story.
So good.
Obviously, it's getting at the same point here of he's instilling his, for lack of a better term, his love, his humanity.
Yeah.
A piece of who he is.
Compassion for his art. Ironically tying it in with the whole thing I was bringing up fast food too, so I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's strange how you have this technology, this tool, and our immediate thing is to be like, oh, how can we make the humanities easier on us? And it's like, well, they're meant to be an outlet for us. They're meant to be a break from the struggles of life, a way to make sense of it all, a way to express ourselves, passions, stuff like that. If you can just have an AI do it all for you, and I'm not saying it still doesn't have maybe some place, like if it's like, what did they call, if you're writing something maybe on the Revolutionary War and you're like, oh shoot, what did they call, what was like an article of clothing, what did they wear, what did a British soldier carry with them, like, the standard gear that they would have had back then. Okay, go ahead, use the AI, say what did the British soldier have, blah 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 from this time. That I have, like, to help you do the research and to help you, get the information you need to better craft your story. I can see. But if it's all going to be just created through the AI and your voice, your style, your passion are all going to be just thrown out, like you said, what am I paying for exactly? Why do you want me to give up however much time I need to read or view this project?
Yeah.
If it's all been created in a sterile digital environment.
Yeah, I think it raises a lot of scary questions, a lot of problematic questions. I do like, there's a lot of negative aspects of AI implementation on certain platforms such as Instagram or other art sharing organizations. We discussed in our concept art episode with Jordan about the dangers of AI on Instagram and other such platforms, taking credit for artist work or, compiling it into a larger sphere where it can be stolen and used for other purposes. Against other forms of entertainment law in the past having protected such things, it's very cannibalistic and going after artists. I've seen instances of certain AI platforms in editing tools actually claiming rights of creation whenever you use an AI tool inside of their platform. Because you used AI in the implementation of creating it, then they take and claim the creation rights of that piece, so you actually legally no longer own it. And like a lot of crazy things such as that. But by that same token, there's also the positive take of Blender. Blender is a 3D modeling software that is free on the front end of things, but if you create something that ends up making X amount of dollars, they then recoup a certain level of profit of that legally. It's nominal, it's small, but on the benefit of that on the front end is, as independent creators, you have access to a full 3D modeling software, where in the past that wasn't always the case. Those platforms were very expensive. So like anything, it cuts both ways. There's a positive end to that as well.
It's just like Grant said later, like, we're all just running to catch up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think
so much has happened.
I definitely don't think it's as like apocalyptic Skynet as some people would present it. I think that there are a lot
at the moment. No, it's not that.
I think a lot of tools have their place that have been introduced, but I do think it's in a scary place where we're throwing a lot of untested spaghetti at the wall for how it's going to impact a lot of facets of the industry. Like, we know how it's going to impact the craft, and we know how, this certain tool will make one thing easier for one person, but it's like, what are the longer standing ramifications of that? What are the ethics of that? And I think ethics constantly get thrown out the window.
Yeah, ethics. Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah, you always got to stop to think. You were so preoccupied if you could, you never stopped to think if you should.
Exactly. And I can't think of a better place to end.
Because he actually made it.
Still no pickles!